Hey guys, tonight we drift away from our soft pillows and glowing screens to wander through a world that feels like myth, but isn't. The wind whistles low across dry plains where nothing grows but scrub, and the silence is thick enough to hum. Imagine it, a riverbank in ancient Mesopotamia. Broad canals glisten beneath the moonlight, date palms rustle gently overhead, and the distant bleating of goats mixes with the slow slap of a fisherman's paddle. But before you start picturing yourself as some heroic frontiersman, just know this: you probably won't survive the next 24 hours. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the clatter of a nearby wagon wheel cracking. It's sunrise, though here, that mostly means the biting chill is swapping places with the crushing heat. The ground beneath your back is gritty, and the blanket wrapped around you doesn't smell like lavender laundry detergent. It smells like dust, wood smoke, and the sweat of 3 previous owners. Your pillow? A saddlebag stuffed with your only shirt. A cow's skull grins from a few feet away, sun-bleached and half buried in the dirt. You try to sit up, and immediately regret it. Every joint feels like you've been trampled by a disgruntled ox. This is the American Wild West, sometime in the mid-1800s. And unlike the glamorous shootouts in movies, your day starts with immediate dehydration and a very real risk of splinters in places they shouldn't be. There's no tent, just you, a fire pit, and an old tarp that might have been canvas once, but now resembles something a Mesopotamian potter might have used to wrap clay bricks. A farmer in ancient Sumer might have looked at your setup and chuckled. At least he had mud brick walls and beer made from barley. That beer, by the way, was often sipped through straws to avoid the floating crud on top. Not elegant, but arguably better than the cracked canteen you're holding, whose contents taste like sun-warmed tin and regret. The wagon party you're with is already stirring. Someone's shouting about a missing mule. Another's muttering curses while poking at yesterday's campfire embers. There's no time for a gentle stretch or morning meditation, not unless your idea of a yoga pose is shiver next to dying embers while scratching flea bites. As you stand and dust yourself off, your boots squelch slightly. Why? Because they soaked up last night's surprise thunderstorm, and you forgot to flip them upside down. A mistake any seasoned frontiersman would mock you for. If this were ancient Mesopotamia, a temple scribe would have warned you through clay tablets to beware water spirits and mildew demons. Here, you just get trench foot. A fact for your sleepy brain: in ancient Mesopotamia, early farmers built elaborate canal systems to tame their rivers and irrigate crops, even managing crop rotations. Meanwhile, here in the Wild West, water is so scarce you're wondering if drinking cactus juice might be worth the side effects. Spoiler, it's not. Your breakfast options are grim. No coffee, no eggs, just a rock-hard slab of hardtack that could double as a roofing tile. You bite down and nearly chip a molar. This isn't breakfast. It's a chewing challenge sponsored by dental pain. If you had the teeth of a cowboy, you wouldn't notice. Historians still debate how many frontiersmen lost their teeth before age 30. It's either most or all. Either way, you don't see anyone smiling in those old daguerreotypes for a reason. Someone offers you jerky, and it smells questionable. You politely decline, opting instead to gnaw on the least burned edge of last night's biscuit. It tastes like regret, baked into a hockey puck. Over by the fire, a woman is stirring a blackened pot of beans and muttering something about lucky if the cholera holds off another week. She's probably not joking. You sigh and stare at the open plains, a flat, infinite stretch of golden grass, low hills, and bone-dry nothing. No trees, no shade, just the unforgiving honesty of nature. Coyotes yip in the distance, reminding you that even the predators here are better adapted than you are. A stray dog slinks into camp, ribs showing, tail low. It noses your pack hopefully, then vanishes. Back in ancient Mesopotamia, dogs were often buried with care and even inscribed onto cylinder seals as loyal companions. Here, they're barely surviving scavengers, just like you. Oh, and if you think you'll sneak off to freshen up, think again. There's no mirror, no soap, and certainly no running water. You splash your face with what's left in your flask, and it smells faintly like the pickles that used to be stored in it. At least your nose is too stuffy from dust inhalation to care. You saddle up, awkwardly, realizing that horse riding isn't as intuitive as the Westerns made it seem. Your spine already misses chairs. A breeze picks up, bringing with it the sharp scent of sagebrush and something more sinister, dry manure baking in the sun. And so, with the sun now cresting above the horizon like a merciless overseer, you start your journey. You squint into the light and pull your hat down. Wait, you forgot your hat. Too bad. Sunstroke will be another item on your growing list of concerns. If you survive the day, you'll likely have a new collection of blisters, burns, and insect bites to remember it by. The ancient world had its hardships, sure, but at least they invented beer, irrigation, and written complaints about bad harvests. You, on the other hand, are facing a 20-mile ride on a mule named Beans, with no idea when you'll next see a stream that doesn't smell like feet. Sleep tight. The sun's up now, high and bold and merciless. There's no gentle morning warmth, no golden hour glow. Just an instant, harsh beam of light blasting across the cracked earth. You shade your eyes, but the glare bouncing off the pale dust is so intense it feels like your corneas are sizzling. By the time you locate the outhouse, or what passes for one, you're already sweating through layers of wool and canvas that weren't meant for comfort, just for not dying of exposure. You make your way to the creaking little shack that someone nailed together last summer with more hope than carpentry skill. Every step sends up a puff of dirt, and as you open the makeshift door, hinged on leather straps, not metal, you're greeted by a low rattle. Not from your stomach, from inside. You freeze. It's a rattlesnake, coiled comfortably in the cool shadow beneath the wooden seat, like it's the rightful owner of this establishment. You back away slowly, unsure whether to scream, faint, or just quietly abandon your entire digestive system. In ancient Mesopotamia, there were snakes too, vipers slithering through reeds along irrigation ditches. But those folks had serpent gods, incantations, and healing amulets made of baked clay. You have a stick, maybe, if you can find one. A wiry teenager from your wagon party. He's been chewing on a toothpick for 3 hours straight. Ambles over, and kicks a rock toward the outhouse. Yep, snake's back, he mutters, like this is just Tuesday. Last guy tried to poke it, got bit in the rear. Real bad. We made him lie on a cold skillet. You open your mouth to ask why, but he's already wandered off. So, you head to the next best option, a ditch, or more accurately, a shallow depression in the land that you hope isn't used for something worse. Privacy is a distant memory. You do what you must, awkwardly shielding yourself with a scraggly bush while looking around like a guilty goat. The breeze picks up, and the smells of the camp return: beans, horse sweat, and the earthy scent of whatever's slowly rotting behind the cook tent. You're starting to understand why people in old photos look so serious. It wasn't just the long exposure time. It was probably the long exposure to that outhouse. As you shuffle back into camp, someone hands you a piece of cloth, coarse, unwashed, and smelling faintly of mold. Wash up, they say. With what water? You dab at your face like a fancy Mesopotamian priest cleansing before temple ritual, only with less ceremony and more mosquito bites. A historical tidbit to comfort you. In ancient Uruk, people bathed using cone-shaped soap cakes made of ash and animal fat. That's right, Mesopotamians had soap, and you don't. You're in the wrong timeline. Next on the agenda, chores. The wagon boss, a sun-leathered woman with a voice like dried corn husks, assigns you water duty. You'll find the creek about half a mile east, she says, unless it dried up again. You start walking, canteen in one hand, small barrel in the other, feet dragging like you're trekking through molasses. But you're not. You're just slow, because your boots don't bend properly, and every step rubs a new blister into being. The sun has fully claimed the sky now. No clouds, no shade. Just the overwhelming awareness that your scalp might start peeling before noon. You think fondly of Mesopotamian farmers who wore loose linen tunics and often soaked their heads with river water to keep cool. Here, you're wrapped like a baked burrito in itchy wool and denim. At the creek, really more of a muddy trickle, you find a sad little puddle surrounded by buzzing flies and suspicious hoofprints. You fill your canteen, hoping the water isn't too brackish. It tastes like mud, algae, and distant regrets, but it's wet, and that's all that matters. A woman nearby is beating laundry on a rock. She glances up at you with a mixture of pity and amusement. City folk? She asks. You nod, too proud to say you own 3 different water filters at home, and once returned to coffee because it had the wrong mineral flavor. As you walk back, you nearly trip over a sunbathing lizard. It doesn't move. It's probably smarter than you are. You step around it carefully and hear a shout from camp. Someone's mule is missing again. Beans, your assigned steed, is thankfully still tied up, chewing on something you suspect is a boot. Mounting him is another lesson in humility. You awkwardly swing a leg over, miss the stirrup, and land in the dust. Again. A Mesopotamian courier on donkeyback would probably mock your form. Those folks rode through cities like Lagash with packages of fish, herbs, and reed scrolls balanced perfectly. You can't even manage your own dignity. You finally settle in the saddle, back aching, arms wobbling like spaghetti. Beans takes 2 lazy steps and stops. He's not moving. You click your tongue. Nothing. You nudge him. He sighs audibly and starts chewing again. A child throws a pine cone at his flank, and suddenly you're lurching forward at full speed. You hold on for dear life, bouncing in ways that feel medically unsafe. The camp blurs behind you, and for a glorious wind-rushed moment, you feel like a true frontiers person, until Beans veers hard to the left, and you slide sideways out of the saddle and land flat on your back in a patch of prickly weeds. You lie there, staring at the sky, wondering if this counts as exercise. Above you, a hawk wheels lazily through the blue. You imagine it eyeing you the same way Mesopotamian gods once surveyed their temple, judging, bemused, slightly unimpressed. Back at camp, they're laughing. Someone offers you a chunk of jerky as a consolation prize. You take it, chew twice, and give up. It's like gnawing wood. You glance around at the people you're riding with. Every one of them is sun-scorched, dirt-covered, and missing at least one item of footwear or dignity. But they're still going. Just like the ancient Mesopotamians who tilled cracked soil and prayed to cloudy skies for mercy. So will you, probably. Or you'll just sit here for a while and let the breeze cool your face. Either way, the snake's still in the outhouse. You finally manage to coax Beans back into camp, which mostly involves holding out half a stale biscuit like an offering to a cranky deity. He accepts it with a sloppy crunch, and you dismount. Carefully this time. Your tailbone still echoes with the memory of yesterday's tumble. Someone claps you on the back. Told you Beans only listens to food, they chuckle. You force a laugh, trying not to collapse. The morning is now in full swing, and the heat has officially started its reign. There's no air conditioning, obviously, and no shady oasis to retreat to. Just grit, flies, and the distinct sound of someone complaining about saddle sores. You hear the words infected boil, and immediately redirect your thoughts to anything else, like Mesopotamian bread ovens, which at least smelled nice. And speaking of bread, your midday meal is being prepared over a small fire pit. You approach with cautious optimism. Maybe, just maybe, it'll be something decent. Instead, you're handed what looks like a gray, soggy dumpling. It's called son of a gun stew. You ask what's in it. The cook just winks. In ancient Mesopotamia, food offerings to the gods included roasted lamb, figs, and loaves stamped with temple seals. Here, you're praying to survive whatever mysterious meat this is. You chew, slowly. It's oddly sweet, which is not a compliment. Someone next to you says, I think it's squirrel, or part of a squirrel. You suddenly miss supermarket labels and expiration dates. As you eat, a dust devil kicks up from the east. A small cyclone of sand whips through camp, knocking over a pan of beans and sending someone's shirt flying into a cactus. Everyone groans, but barely reacts. This is normal. You cough for 5 minutes, convinced you've swallowed half the trail. Meanwhile, a cowpoke named Lyle digs the shirt out of the cactus and shrugs. Adds ventilation. If you think the Wild West was glamorous, you might be confusing it with a costume party. Because out here, style is survival. Hats are mandatory. Sunstroke kills. Bandanas aren't for fashion. They're to keep the dust out of your lungs. And if your boots don't fit right, you'll be crawling home with your socks tied to your knees. Fun fact: the Mesopotamians wore sandals made of reeds and leather, often etched with protective symbols. Meanwhile, your boots have given you 3 blisters, one weird rash, and a growing suspicion that your big toe is developing a personality of its own. You're put on fence duty next, tasked with patching a section chewed up by a cow or possibly by beans. The post is made of splintering wood, held together by wire that seems actively malicious. You fumble with the coils, nicking your fingers in 4 different places before realizing you've made things worse. The fence now leans dramatically, like it's trying to leave. You sigh. In ancient Mesopotamia, they built walls from sun-dried bricks mixed with straw and mud. Simple, solid, logical. You, on the other hand, are engaged in a losing battle with a fence that appears to have free will. Your hands are covered in scrapes and tiny metal burrs. You try rinsing them with the last of your drinking water, but just end up dirtier. Someone points to a tub of leftover stew water. Good enough, they say. You're not convinced. You stagger back to the fire pit and lower yourself onto a log. It groans. You groan. Your knees sound like 2 old maracas. A small child from another wagon hands you a slingshot and dares you to hit a can. You miss. Twice. The child hits it immediately, then pats your arm solemnly, like he's just seen your soul give up. The sky has turned pale blue, nearly white, in the noonday blaze. You squint up at it, wondering if clouds are a myth. There's talk of moving on soon, maybe another few miles before dusk. You pray silently that a few means less than one. Somewhere behind you, a harmonica starts playing. It's off key, and the tune is unrecognizable. Still, it's oddly comforting, like hearing your neighbor vacuum at night. You hate it, but it means someone else is still alive out there. One of the older women is sewing a shirt using a needle that looks like it could double as a weapon. Her hands are cracked, stained, and methodical. You compliment her stitches. She squints up and says, "They used to say stitches warded off demons." You blink. She laughs. "Don't worry. We only have snakes and heat stroke out here." Oddly enough, the ancient Mesopotamians had similar beliefs. Certain patterns were embroidered into clothing to keep evil spirits at bay. They even buried tiny figurines beneath their floors for protection. You consider stuffing a pebble in your boot, just in case. By mid-afternoon, the camp starts packing up. The wagons creak under the weight of barrels, crates, tools, and more dust. Always more dust. You help load a sack of flour that splits halfway through the lift, covering you in a fine layer of beige. Someone jokingly calls you biscuits. The nickname will probably stick. Before long, you're back on Beans. He trudges forward with the enthusiasm of a tired librarian, stopping every few minutes to sniff things that do not warrant sniffing. Your legs ache. Your back begs for a chiropractor. Your lips are cracked, and you can't remember what cold water feels like. Historians still argue whether life on the trail was noble hardship or brutal drudgery. You're leaning hard toward the second option. The sun lowers slightly, not enough to matter, but enough to make you think about dusk. Your shirt is soaked, your pants are stiff, and your face feels like it's aged 10 years. But you keep riding. Because what else is there to do? The trail ahead narrows as the sun begins its slow descent behind the hills. casting long shadows that stretch like dark fingers across the baked earth. You're riding near the back of the wagon train now, less from strategy and more because Beans insists on stopping to examine every shrub, rock, and suspicious pile of dung along the way. The ruts in the dirt are deep, worn into the ground by months of passing wheels and hooves. The jostling makes your bones hum like tuning forks. You try shifting your weight to ease the pain. But Beans chooses that exact moment to stumble on a stone, jarring your spine like a dropped banjo. In ancient Mesopotamia, travelers moved along carefully maintained trade routes between city-states, roads made of crushed reeds and packed soil, sometimes even paved with stones. They had camel caravans and riverboats. You have Beans, whose most reliable feature is unpredictability. Someone up ahead yells, "Cactus jam!" and the whole train slows to a crawl. You peer around the wagon wheels and see the problem. A prickly patch of nature growing stubbornly right across the narrow path. One man dismounts and starts hacking at the spiny offenders with a rusty saw. You wonder if he'll survive the encounter without ending up looking like a pincushion. You dismount, grudgingly, and decide to help. Carefully, you grasp a section of the cactus with a burlap sack and attempt to yank it aside. The cactus responds by sinking 6 tiny spines into your forearm. You let out a very quiet, dignified yelp. A woman nearby chuckles. "Don't squeeze it like that. Slide under it, like a snake." You glance at her to see if she's joking. She isn't. Sliding under it sounds like a terrible idea. So instead, you opt for scooting around the edge of the trail, stepping delicately over a patch of rocks and narrowly avoiding a scorpion that looks like it's considering legal action for trespassing. You make it back to Beans in one piece and mutter, "You better be grateful." He sneezes on your boot. Once the path is cleared, the wagons lurch forward again. You're walking now, reins in hand, partly to stretch your legs and partly because you've lost all feeling in your rear. A few others are walking too. Kids skipping beside the wheels, a man playing a cracked fiddle, someone humming what might be a hymn or just a complaint set to music. You glance up at the horizon and catch a flicker of movement. A rider, just at the edge of sight. A lone figure, silhouetted against the light. Maybe a scout. Maybe just someone looking for a quiet place to cry. Either way, they disappear behind a ridge before you can call out. Back in the ancient days, travelers in Mesopotamia worried about lions, desert raiders, and bandits hiding in the hills. You worry about running out of jerky and stepping on cactus needles. It's a different kind of danger, but not necessarily less painful. As the sun dips lower, the trail becomes trickier to navigate. Rocks appear where there were none before. Shadows stretch and twist. You stub your toe on something jagged and possibly prehistoric. You swear it was a dinosaur bone, though more likely it was a very rude rock. "Time to make camp." The call finally echoes down the line, and a collective sigh rises like steam from the whole group. You find a flat patch of ground near a spindly tree, more a suggestion of a tree, really, and start unrolling your bedroll. It's dusty, lumpy, and filled with mysterious particles. You slap it a few times to shake out any unwanted visitors. 2 beetles and a small frog leap for freedom. The firewood crew returns with a bundle of twigs, most of them barely thick enough to burn. "This'll last us half an hour," someone grumbles. "Better than nothing," another replies. They pile it up in a ring of stones and start coaxing the flames to life using flint, steel, and profanity. As sparks catch and flames begin to flicker, you feel a tiny rush of warmth that has less to do with the fire and more to do with just not moving. Your muscles are grateful. Your blisters are singing lullabies. And the little frog you evicted earlier is eyeing your boot like it's real estate. Dinner tonight is a repeat of yesterday. More stew. Only this time, there's less mystery to it. You recognize at least one ingredient: potato. Probably. You chew in silence, the fire crackling and popping like a tired conversation. Someone passes around a jug of something strong smelling and vaguely flammable. You politely decline. Off to one side, a boy with a harmonica plays a slow tune that echoes eerily across the prairie. It's haunting, almost Mesopotamian in its cadence. You close your eyes and for a moment imagine you're on the banks of the Euphrates, listening to temple music drifting on the wind. Historically speaking, the Mesopotamians had a rich musical tradition: flutes, lyres, drums, and they used music for rituals, feasts, and even medicine. Out here, music serves one main purpose: distracting you from your sore feet and existential despair. Night falls completely, and stars emerge, slow and steady, like someone poking holes in a giant sheet above your head. There are more stars than you've ever seen. No light pollution, no planes, just the sky, wild and ancient and terrifyingly big. You lie on your back, staring up, wondering how humans ever thought they were the center of the universe. You can hear the distant howl of a coyote, the soft snorting of horses, and someone snoring like they're trying to saw a log in half. A nearby voice whispers, "You cold?" You nod. They toss you an extra blanket, rough, scratchy, and somehow colder than you already are. You take it anyway. In the ancient world, Mesopotamians believed the stars were gods watching over the world. You start to understand why. The night sky feels alive, like something is watching you back. And maybe, just maybe, it's amused. By dawn, you're questioning everything: your life choices, your decision not to pack a thicker blanket, and whether your hip will ever forgive you for sleeping on a rock the size of a melon. The fire has burned down to glowing embers, and a fine dew clings to everything like a cold, passive-aggressive hug. You sit up, groan like a haunted door, and realize Beans is staring at you, judging, or maybe just hungry. Someone stirs the coals and adds kindling, coaxing up smoke and warmth with practiced grunts. The first coffee of the day is boiled in a battered tin pot that probably predates the Civil War. You sip it and immediately regret it. Boiling tar would be gentler. Still, it wakes you up faster than a slap from a Mesopotamian priestess. And yes, those existed. High priestesses in Ur and Babylon weren't just ceremonial. They wielded economic and political power. They kept temple records, interpreted omens, and in some cases, oversaw entire estates. You sip your cowboy coffee and try to imagine one of them surviving a single morning out here without smiting someone. Breakfast is dry cornbread and jerky that could break teeth. You chew thoughtfully, imagining the gods of Sumer judging your modern softness. Someone wanders by with a squirrel on a stick. You don't ask. It's another moving day, of course, because if you sit still too long in the Wild West, you're either buried or forgotten. The wagons creak into motion again, and you remount Beans, who lets out a dramatic huff like he also had plans to sleep in. The trail today winds through low hills and dusty ravines, the kind of terrain where you half expect an ambush or a rattlesnake sermon. As you travel, a rider gallops back toward the group. "Tracks ahead," he shouts. "Maybe Apache." A ripple of tension spreads through the camp like spilled oil. Rifles appear, eyes narrow. The men form a tight ring around the wagons. You, of course, have no idea what to do, other than try not to look edible. But it turns out to be a false alarm. The tracks belong to wild horses, not warriors. You feel a strange mix of relief and guilt. Somewhere deep in your mind, you know the story of the Wild West has long been tangled with myth, bias, and cinematic drama. Historians still debate whether these frontier tensions were everyday realities or exaggerated fears. The truth, as always, likely sits somewhere in the middle, layered like a wagon wheel cake baked under stress. You continue riding, the tension lingering like smoke. The silence is broken only by the creak of wheels and the occasional burst of flatulence from someone's mule. The glamour of the Old West, if it ever existed, has dissolved under your sweat and saddle sores. Mid-morning, the wagon master calls for a break near a trickling creek, the first sign of fresh water in days. You leap from Beans like a hero, dismounting in slow motion, only to trip and faceplant into a patch of burrs. Dignity, zero. Pain, abundant. You rinse your face in the icy water, sighing with something close to joy. You've never been more grateful for nature's plumbing. While you refill your canteen, a boy next to you points upstream. "There's frogs in there, big ones." You nod, suddenly wondering if frogs are on the menu tonight. In Mesopotamia, water was sacred, life-giving, and divine. The Tigris and Euphrates weren't just rivers, they were gods themselves. Priests performed rituals to ensure their favor, and flood cycles determined the rhythm of civilization. You wonder what the Mesopotamians would make of this muddy creek and your cracked lips. You strip off your boots and dangle your aching feet in the stream. It's a glorious 5 minutes until someone yells, "Snake!" and the moment evaporates like spilled whiskey on a campfire. You scramble back to the bank, barefoot and soaking. As the caravan prepares to move on, you help a woman fix the wheel on her wagon. It's held together with nails, rope, and optimism. Your hands are raw, and you've begun to accept that you will never be fully clean again. Still, there's something weirdly bonding about all of it. The dirt, the struggle, the quiet humor in every failure, a shared misery that somehow becomes community. Like that time your shirt got blown into a cactus and 3 people helped pull out the spines, laughing the whole time. The trail gets steeper as the sun climbs higher. You pass skeletal trees and rocks shaped like forgotten gods. A vulture glides overhead, just in case you were starting to feel too confident. You tip your hat at it. Not today, buddy. By noon, you're drenched again. Your shirt clings to you like betrayal. Someone in the wagon behind you starts singing, and soon others join in. A crooked, off-key hymn that's half worship and half war cry. You mumble along, too tired to resist. You stop for lunch under a crooked rock ledge that provides about 3 inches of shade. Today's feast: more jerky, a tin of cold beans, and something someone swears is cheese. It looks like regret. You eat it anyway. As you chew, someone passes around a deck of worn playing cards. A game starts, somewhere between poker and chaos. Bets include a button, half a biscuit, and a broken harmonica reed. You lose everything in 2 hands and gain a new nickname, Short Stack. It's unclear why. In Mesopotamia, gambling was also common. Dice games carved from bones, bets made in taverns. There were even laws about cheating, with punishments ranging from fines to, well, slightly more permanent solutions. Out here, cheating just gets you side-eyed and maybe dunked in a water barrel. Later, someone finds a patch of wild berries. You rush over, stomach rumbling, only to learn that half of them are probably edible, and the other half make your teeth go numb. You opt for none. The sun starts its slow slide toward the west, and you mount up again. Your legs protest. Beans groans. You wonder what fresh torture tomorrow will bring, and whether you'll survive it with any skin, sanity, or toenails intact. But for now, the wagons roll on, and so do you. The wagon wheels crunch over gravel as the trail descends into a wide, dry basin. There's no shade, no breeze, just a stretching canvas of sun-bleached dust and heat waves dancing like spirits above the cracked ground. Your lips are already dry again. Beans, somehow, manages to look both annoyed and noble, his ears flicking flies with the grace of a bored king. There's a distant shimmer on the horizon, and for a hopeful half-second, you think it might be water. It's not. It's more dust. Of course it is. One of the men near you fans himself with his hat and mutters, "This place makes hell look like a spa." You chuckle, which uses energy you immediately regret spending. The heat doesn't just press down. It crawls over you, slipping under your collar, filling your boots, sticking to your skin like guilt. In ancient Mesopotamia, people dealt with blistering summers too, though they had irrigation canals, shade courtyards, and buildings designed to trap cool air. You have a canteen of lukewarm water and a prayer that the next stop isn't a mirage. Suddenly, the caravan halts again. Up ahead, a wagon's wheel has shattered, spokes splintered like a broken promise. You dismount and trudge over, because there's no version of the frontier where you just wait and let someone else handle it. A group gathers. The broken wheel lies at an odd angle, half buried in dust. The family riding that wagon stands nearby, their faces drawn. One kid's holding a chicken, like it's emotional support. "Anyone got a spare?" the wagon master asks. "Used mine last week," someone replies. "Too small." "Wrong size?" You offer your best contribution, a shrug and a look of quiet solidarity. In Mesopotamia, wheel-making was serious business. Entire workshops existed for crafting carts and chariots. The wheel itself may have been invented there. Out here, it feels like the wheel is still, in beta testing. Eventually, a solution is cobbled together. Literally, a half-rotted wheel from a discarded supply cart is patched and bolted into place with strips of rawhide and what might be parts of a frying pan. The whole fix is held together by hope and spite. You get moving again, though now the caravan's rhythm is broken. Each creaking turn of that replacement wheel groaning like it's about to give up entirely. And honestly, you understand. Hours pass. The wind picks up, carrying with it the taste of salt and grit. It stings your eyes and sticks in your teeth. You wipe your forehead with a sleeve that's already soaked and feel like you're slowly turning into one of those petrified wood fossils they always talk about in museum gift shops. Up ahead, there's a patch of low brush, barely green, but greener than anything you've seen in hours. A few riders veer off and return with hopeful news. A spring just over the next ridge. You climb, breath hitching, heart thumping like a war drum. The incline isn't steep, but it's relentless. And when you reach the top, there it is, a miracle in miniature. A spring-fed pool, maybe 20 feet across, circled by damp earth and the faintest hint of coolness. The wagons roll in, and the spring becomes an oasis of chaos. Horses drink greedily. Kids splash around. Someone tries fishing with a bent spoon and optimism. You crouch beside it and dip your hands in. The water is icy, clear, delicious. It tastes like forgiveness. You wash your face and feel the dust of the day fall away like a curse being lifted. The Mesopotamians believed in Apsu, the fresh water beneath the earth, source of life and wisdom. Standing here, elbow deep in muddy divinity, you understand the poetry of that belief. Nearby, someone's cooking again, this time beans and wild onions in a blackened skillet. The smell is alarming, but at least it's different. You eat sitting on a stone, watching the sun retreat behind the horizon like a tired performer taking a bow. As twilight falls, the colors bleed across the sky, burnt orange, deep indigo, bruised pink. It's beautiful enough to distract you from your aching knees. A woman nearby is brushing her hair with a comb made from cow bone. She hums quietly, some old hymn, maybe older than the hills around you. You smile, not because you recognize it, but because it fits. Tonight's camp is tighter than before. Folks are feeling cautious. Coyotes howl in the distance, and the firelight flickers nervously. You sit near the edge of the ring, blanket wrapped around you. Beans tethered close. A man with a heavy beard and a 1,000-yard stare tells a story about a group who camped too close to a dry ravine. Flash flood came in the night. No survivors. You stare at your cup of water and wonder if it's enough to save you or just a reminder of what's waiting to betray you. Then, someone farts loudly, and the tension breaks like a snapped rope. Laughter rolls through the circle. As stars emerge overhead, you think again of the Mesopotamians, how they studied the skies, tracked Venus and Jupiter, and named constellations with stories. For them, the heavens were maps and messages. For you, they're just the last thing you see before sleep drags you under like a river current. Your blanket is scratchy, your boots are by your head, and your last thought before drifting off is, I'd give anything for a real pillow. Then, silence and stars. You wake up to something wet nudging your cheek. It's not rain, because rain would be too gentle for this place. It's Beans, snuffling your face like he's trying to decide if you've died overnight. You groan, shove him away with half-hearted dignity, and sit up to face the world. Damp, dusty, and somehow even less forgiving than yesterday. Your limbs ache in places you didn't know had names. You slept on a slope, and now your back feels like a scroll someone tried to flatten with a rock. Breakfast is leftover beans, the food, not the mule, and the fire is little more than a sulking pile of ash. Still, the caravan moves. Because it has to. You brush the dust off your trousers and rejoin the endless march westward. Up ahead, the terrain shifts again, rolling into flatter land dotted with thorny bushes and half-dead trees. The sun is already climbing, and the heat returns with its usual heavy hand draped over your shoulders like a poorly made quilt. One rider rides ahead as a scout. He's got a long rifle and a pair of binoculars polished enough to reflect your shame. He's gone for an hour. When he returns, there's a strange hush. Abandoned homestead, he says. We'll stop there. Might be something useful. And so, the trail diverts. When you arrive, it's clear that abandoned might be too kind. The small shack is sun-bleached and warped, its door hanging sideways on rusted hinges. A chicken coop stands half-collapsed nearby, and what might once have been a garden is now a mess of tangled weeds and bones. Human? You don't ask. Inside the cabin, there's a single cot with a broken leg, a rusty stove, and a journal on the floor, pages half-eaten by mice. You flip through what's left. The last legible entry reads, "Something's watching us at night. We ain't staying long." Comforting. Still, the group salvages what it can. Old nails, bits of rope, a few jars of questionable preserves. One child finds a doll missing its head and insists on keeping it. The doll stares at you later from across the fire with silent, unblinking judgment. You help gather firewood, which mostly consists of snapping brittle limbs off skeletal trees. The wind whistles through the gaps in the wood like a warning you're too tired to heed. There's a moment of stillness by the broken fence when you hear it. Singing, low, mournful, coming from just beyond the trees. Everyone freezes. A couple of rifles go up, but when someone walks toward the sound, it vanishes like a mirage. Whispers pass through the camp. "Spirits," one man mutters. Another spits and says, "Or just wind." Either way, the chill doesn't leave. In ancient Mesopotamia, they believed in Etemu, ghosts of the improperly buried. They wandered the earth, causing illness, madness, or worse. Priests performed rituals to calm or banish them, offering bread, water, and oil. Out here, you've got a can of beans, an itchy wool blanket, and good intentions. Night comes fast over the plains. The group beds down inside and around the shack, and someone nails a board over the door just in case. You sleep beside Beans, hand resting on a cold tin cup and a stick you keep calling a club, but it's really just a broken shovel handle. You don't sleep much. By morning, the group is ready to move again. But as the wagons roll out, the woman with the headless doll notices something etched on a tree beside the shack. It's faint, but you all see it. 4 hash marks and a fifth line crossing through. A tally of what? No one says. You ride harder that day. Nobody asks for extra breaks. The land changes again. Flat prairie, swaying grass, but always with that underlying tension, like something just beneath the soil is watching. Around noon, you spot a dust cloud in the distance. At first, you think it's a storm, but then it moves like a herd, and it is. Buffalo. Dozens, maybe hundreds, thundering across the plain. The earth shakes under their hooves, and the sky fills with the sound of primal, wordless thunder. It's terrifying and magnificent. You feel small. You feel lucky. You feel like running. You've never seen anything that alive. Back in Mesopotamia, herding and animal husbandry were core to daily life. But instead of buffalo, it was cattle, goats, and donkeys, raised not just for food, but for temple offerings, labor, and even as currency. Sumerian tablets mention herders keeping precise counts. You can't imagine anyone counting buffalo. The only thing to do is get out of the way. You veer off the trail, hunkering low as the herd passes, hooves like war drums pounding the earth around you. Beans is spooked and nearly throws you. You're proud you managed to stay on, if only by becoming one with the saddle like a very panicked statue. As the dust settles, the silence is thicker than before. No one talks much after that. There's a feeling you've seen something that doesn't belong to you. Something old, wild, and not entirely gone. Evening falls with little ceremony. A new campsite is chosen beneath a set of jagged hills that look like broken teeth. You eat quietly. Tonight it's salted pork and sorrow. Beans munches dry grass like he's the one doing all the work. Someone tells a story by the fire about a man who tried to survive out here alone, building his own empire with a single rifle, a dog, and a stack of dreams. It ends poorly. You nod politely, too tired to laugh, but the point isn't lost on you. Surviving out here isn't about being strong or smart. It's about being lucky, over and over again. And even that runs out eventually. As you lie down for another night under open stars, you realize something. No movie, no game, no school book ever prepared you for this, and the dust gets into your thoughts, the silence into your bones. You roll over, pull the blanket tight, and hope tomorrow brings a little mercy. The morning is different, not better, just different. You wake to a golden hush, the kind of light that filters softly through dust like some lazy god decided to paint the world in sepia tones. Your joints ache, your back protests, but at least nothing's on fire. That's something. Beans, of course, is already awake. He's chewing on your bedroll like it owes him money. You sigh and nudge him off with a grunt. He responds with a fart and a flick of the tail. Love is complicated out here. The caravan starts late today. People are slow to stir, like the whole group has finally accepted that there's no rushing the West. It'll kill you whether you're early or late. You ride in near silence. Boots dusty, lips chapped, eyes scanning the horizon. You're learning how to read it now. Not well, but better than before. A distant ridge might mean shelter. A change in the color of the dirt might signal water. A sudden stillness in the wind might mean something's wrong. Midday, the caravan crests a low rise and stumbles into what used to be a small settlement. You see the burned out remains of wooden walls, a half buried well, and what was once a schoolhouse, now collapsed in on itself like a failed promise. No one says anything, but the group halts. You walk through the ruins slowly. A rusted horseshoe lies next to a child's boot. There's an overturned rocking chair with one arm missing, lying on its side like it simply gave up waiting. Inside the schoolhouse, the chalkboard still holds faint marks, equations maybe, or someone's name. Your fingers brush the dusty surface, and the white streaks smudge like ghost handwriting. Back in Mesopotamia, education was a serious affair, mostly for scribes, priests, and the elite. Boys learned to write cuneiform on clay tablets, memorizing complex symbols for trade, myth, and administration. Teachers were strict. Punishments were creative. There's even a clay tablet where a student complains about being beaten for poor penmanship. Some things never change. But here in the West, you get the sense that knowledge didn't have time to thrive before survival took over. This school, like so much else, was a fragile experiment in permanence. A small group of kids from your caravan explore alongside you. One of them picks up a cracked slate board and asks if it can be used for drawing maps. You nod. Sure, just don't lick it. They nod solemnly, like you've just passed down some ancient wisdom. After a quick lunch of jerky and dust-flavored hardtack, the group moves on. But the mood has shifted. Quieter, heavier. Everyone's thinking the same thing. That could have been us. As the afternoon stretches into evening, the land rises again, hillier now and windswept. The wagons groan under the weight of the climb, and you're starting to understand why people left furniture behind along the trail. You'd give anything to toss your boots into the canyon and walk barefoot into legend. A sudden cry goes up. Snake! You freeze mid-step. Sure enough, a rattler, thick and coiled, lies sunning itself right in the wagon's path. One of the riders draws a pistol. You cover your ears. The shot rings out, sharp and final. The snake twitches once, then nothing. Dinner? Someone jokes. You sincerely hope they're kidding. The Mesopotamians had their fair share of dangerous creatures, lions, scorpions, even snakes tied to various gods and omens. The god Ningishizida, for instance, was symbolized by serpents and vines, sometimes seen as a protector, sometimes as a bringer of death. You wonder what that god would think of this place. As twilight falls, camp is made in a shallow gorge. It's not ideal. Less visibility, more echo. But it's better than open plains. Fires are lit low and close. You boil some coffee that tastes like burned leather but warms your hands. Someone begins carving a small figure out of bone. Maybe a charm. Maybe a toy. You're not sure. You watch the shavings fall into the fire and vanish. Later that night, a storm rolls in. Not the kind you hear coming. Not with thunder and trumpet-like warnings. This one slides over the horizon like a thief, low and growling. The wind picks up first, sharp, howling, slapping dust into your eyes. Then comes the rain, sudden and angry, like the sky's been holding a grudge all day. You scramble to cover your gear, your blanket, your mule. Beans glares at you with all the disapproval of an ancient Mesopotamian priest who just watched you spill a sacred offering. The ground turns slick fast. A small stream forms beside the wagons. Water seeps into your boots, your clothes, your bones. People curse and slip and lash their belongings tighter. One tent collapses. A wheel spins loose and rattles into the dark like it's trying to escape. For a moment, the chaos swells, lightning cracking overhead, shadows leaping like dancers across the canyon walls. And then it passes, as fast as it came. The silence afterward is worse. Every breath feels loud. The camp is drenched and steaming. You sit in your soggy blanket and realize there's no drying off out here. Not really. The rain just becomes part of you. Back in ancient cities like Ur or Lagash, they built drainage systems, planned their towns with water in mind. Here, your drainage system is your boots, and they're currently drowning. You curl up by the dying fire, soaked and shivering. But for once, you're not alone. Everyone looks like wet laundry. Everyone's exhausted. Someone laughs, and somehow that breaks the spell. You fall asleep listening to the sound of distant thunder, far away now, like it's chasing someone else across the plain, and you hope they're faster than you. Morning comes with a brightness so unforgiving it feels personal. You peel open your eyes and find your blanket stiff with dried mud. Your boots, left too close to the fire to dry, now resemble warped leather bricks. Beans has somehow managed to stay dry, curled smugly beneath a canvas tarp, like some royal beast who knows his worth. You crawl from your soggy bedroll, each movement announcing itself with an arthritic crack. The air smells like damp ash, wet leather, and human resignation. The caravan is sluggish today. Half the wheels need re-greasing. A quarter of the food bags are wet and beginning to sour. And no one, not even the eternal optimist who brought a deck of cards and a harmonica, is cracking jokes. But the road calls. Or rather, it growls. Because today, you're entering canyon country. The ground splits before you in deep cuts. Red earth worn down by wind and centuries. Towering walls of sandstone rise on either side, casting shadows so long they swallow your wagon in moments. The path narrows. You can't see more than 30 feet ahead. It's beautiful, majestic even. But you're too busy worrying about flash floods, ambushes, and whether that rock up ahead looks like it wants to fall on your head. In Mesopotamia, canyons weren't common, but rivers carved their own winding corridors. The Tigris and Euphrates provided life, danger, and borders all at once. Just like here, geography was destiny. And yours is shaped like a throat you're about to walk straight into. The air is dry again, blessedly so, but you're sweating like a baker in a brick oven. Each mile through the canyon feels like 3. The wagon wheels grind against stone. Mules pant. A crow calls from above, and echoes bounce around you like laughter from some bored god. Then, from the back of the caravan, a shout, "Rider!" Everyone freezes. Rifles come up. You squint down the trail, and sure enough, a lone figure appears, a man on a dark horse, coming fast. It's impossible to tell who he is at first. He's covered in dust and shadow, hat low, coat flapping like wings, but he slows as he nears, raises one hand in greeting. You don't lower your guard. Turns out he's a courier sent from a nearby outpost 2 days' ride ahead. He brings news: a dried up spring, a broken bridge, and worse, rumors of a group of bandits stalking the canyon trails. The tension rises like smoke from wet firewood. Still, there's no turning back. You push onward, every creak of the wagon louder than it should be. Every shadow feels like it's watching. You imagine ambushes behind each bend. You rehearse how you'd react. Spoiler, poorly. That night, camp is made in a narrow clearing between sheer walls. Fires are kept small and scattered rifles are cleaned. Knives are checked. Beans stands close to you without being asked. Even he senses the shift. Dinner is sparse. Hardtack, more beans, the food this time, and coffee so bitter it could melt a horseshoe. Someone whispers a story about a family that vanished in a place just like this. They say their wagon was found with the fire still burning and the stew still warm, but no sign of the family, just boot prints leading nowhere. You try not to listen, but it sticks. As you settle in for the night, you find yourself staring up at the stars again. In ancient Mesopotamia, the night sky was a sacred map. They studied constellations, recorded eclipses, and believed the heavens were full of omens. Entire ziggurats were built for stargazing, prayer, and possibly even weather forecasting. Here, the stars seem less like omens and more like distant witnesses. They say nothing, they just watch. Sleep comes hard. Every twig snap jerks you upright. Every breeze becomes a whisper you can't quite translate. At one point, you think you hear footsteps. You grab your shovel handle club and wait. It's only a mule shifting its weight, but your heart doesn't settle for an hour. Just before dawn, you wake again, this time to silence. No fire crackles, no snores, no wind. Just that dense, heavy kind of silence that feels like the air itself is holding its breath. Then you hear it, a soft metallic clink, followed by the rustle of leather. Close. You don't move. You barely breathe. Someone, or something, is walking between the wagons. You inch your fingers toward the club. The sound grows louder, then fades, then stops altogether. You wait. 1 minute, 2, 5, nothing. At first light, the caravan stirs with unease. A barrel is missing. A set of boots. Someone swears they saw a figure crouching near the rocks. Another claims it was a dream. But the courier's horse? Gone. Just tracks. Small, deliberate, leading up the canyon wall and vanishing into stone. You all pack up without speaking. Breakfast is skipped. Fear, it turns out, is an excellent appetite suppressant. As the caravan moves on, the canyon narrows further. You keep your hand on your weapon the entire day. Bean sticks to your side like a loyal shadow. You cross a dry riverbed, baked hard as pottery. Cracks zigzag through the ground like cuneiform, the written script of ancient Mesopotamia. The Sumerians used a stylus to press symbols into clay, recording laws, trades, even dreams. You wonder if someone could press your thoughts into the dust here. What would it say? Still alive, maybe, still scared. Eventually, the trail opens. The walls widen, the canyon ends, spitting you out onto a high plateau where the wind returns and the sky seems wider than ever before. You breathe easier, but not by much, because the plateau, that's where the real isolation begins. The plateau stretches before you like the surface of some forgotten planet. No trees, no rivers, no towns. Just rolling, sun-scorched emptiness as far as the eye can see. The trail winds through scrub and rock, brittle grasses whispering dry secrets to the wind. It's the kind of landscape that makes you forget what green ever looked like. Your boots crunch over gravel. Beans trots beside you, ears twitching at invisible signals only mules seem to hear. The wagon wheels creak a tired, mournful song. Everyone is quiet again, not from fear now, but from awe, or maybe just sheer mental fatigue. There's nothing to say when the world around you feels this big and this empty. Your lips are chapped. Your tongue feels like sandpaper. Water is rationed now, strictly. Each person gets a half canteen per day. It's not enough. The sun punishes you, searing your hat's brim, bleaching your sleeves, curling the hairs on your neck like the edges of a burned map. Back in ancient Mesopotamia, irrigation was everything. They mastered the art of diverting water from rivers, carving canals, building basins. That's what made civilization possible in such an arid land. Here, though, you'd give anything for a leaking canal. Mid-morning, someone spots a cloud of dust in the distance. Instantly, the caravan freezes. Could be another group of travelers. Could be wild horses. Could be something worse. You squint. The dust cloud grows. Shapes take form. Riders, 4 of them, coming fast. Weapons are drawn. Wagons are circled. You duck behind a wheel and clutch your improvised club, heart thudding in your throat. The riders stop a few dozen yards out. One waves a white scrap of cloth. Diplomacy, apparently. Turns out, they're part of a neighboring caravan, scattered after a wheel broke and bandits descended. They've been riding for 2 days without rest, searching for water and shelter. One of their group, a young woman, collapses as they approach. Dehydrated, burned, barely conscious. The doctor in your group, a former pharmacist from Ohio, springs into action. You offer water. Someone cuts cloth for shade. Even Beans lets her rest against his side, unusually gentle. It's a strange thing, this moment of compassion out here. In a place where nature constantly tries to kill you, humans occasionally remember how to help each other, briefly, quietly. Later, around the fire, you share stories. One of the riders tells you about the ghost wagon he saw. No driver, no animals, just creaking along the plain in the moonlight. Probably the wind, he says, but his eyes say otherwise. You smile, sleep-deprived and spooked. Mesopotamians had ghost stories too. Ancient clay tablets talk about restless spirits, shades wandering the land of the living. They believed in the Gittim, souls that didn't receive proper burial rites. They were thought to bring disease, misfortune, even madness. You figure they'd be right at home out here. You lie awake, staring up at the stars. They seem brighter now, fiercer. A band of the Milky Way stretches across the sky like a spill of powdered silver. A shooting star arcs and burns. You don't make a wish. Out here, wishes feel expensive. At dawn, the newly joined riders guide you to a place they passed before, a spring nestled in a small basin just off the trail. It's a risk detouring, but it might be the difference between life and death. The caravan agrees. The path down is steep. Wagon wheels slip and grind. You walk most of the way, sliding in the dirt, steadying others as best you can. Beans is sure-footed, almost smug. And then, suddenly, there it is. Water. Clear. Cool. Trickling from a rock into a pool no larger than a washtub. But it's real. You fall to your knees and dip your hands in. It's cold. Glorious. Salvation. You fill canteens, bathe your face, soak your scarf. A few of the kids laugh for the first time in days, splashing each other with cupped hands. It's hard not to cry. In ancient Uruk or Nippur, a place like this would have been marked, mapped, maybe even worshipped. Water wasn't just survival, it was divine. The god Enki ruled over water, wisdom, and creation. People prayed for its presence and feared its absence. Same as you do now. The group rests here for hours. Laundry is strung up to dry. Meals are cooked with more than just boiled beans. There's laughter, a song. Someone even pulls out the harmonica again. Poorly played, but oddly comforting. You sit on a flat rock, Beans snoring beside you, and feel not safe exactly, but human. Then someone screams. You jump up. The young woman, the one who collapsed earlier, is standing, pointing into the scrub brush. Snake? Nope. Bones. You rush over. Sure enough, poking from the dust, ribs, a skull, part of a belt buckle, weathered, sun-bleached, and clearly human. Everyone gathers. No one speaks. There's no sign of how they died. No marker, just one of the countless lost souls who didn't make it. You all agree to bury them. It's the least you can do. A shallow grave is dug, a few stones placed. Someone mutters a prayer. You wonder if it's enough, if anything ever is. Later, you whisper a small promise to yourself. You'll make it. You'll live just long enough to make sure they're not forgotten. That night, dreams come strange. You walk the canyon again, but this time it's lined with ziggurats. The stars above blink in cuneiform. The wind whispers names you don't know. You wake up before dawn, cold but calm. The trail waits. By now, the trail feels more like a sentence than a journey. You wake with dust in your teeth and that dull, familiar ache in your lower back that says, "Congratulations, you've slept on a rock again." Even Beans groans as he stands, more emotionally than physically, you suspect. The spring was a gift, but it's behind you now. Ahead lies the hard pan, the cracked, bone-dry stretch of earth that looks like it's been stomped flat by giants. Nothing grows here. Nothing moves. Not even the wind dares to cross it without second thoughts. You trudge on, your boots puffing little clouds of red dust. Each step crunches like a dry leaf. The heat returns early. It presses against your shoulders like a sandbag, relentless and smug. Sweat pools along your collar. You'd kill for a shadow, but the sun has vaporized every trace of comfort. In ancient Mesopotamia, this would have been the edge of the cultivable world, the line where wheat and barley gave way to salt flats and endless heat. There's a Sumerian word, edinu, meaning plain or steppe. It's where the gods sent heroes to suffer and discover themselves. Lucky you. One of the caravan kids gets sick just after afternoon, heat stroke. His mother pours precious water on his face, whispers desperate prayers. You feel helpless. Someone rigs a shade tent, and the pharmacist checks his pulse. Eventually, the boy opens his eyes. Barely, but he smiles. Somehow. It's the bravest thing you've seen all week. The group slows its pace. Everyone is watching the sun now, counting steps, counting sips, counting hours until nightfall. You've passed into what the locals call the proving ground. Not because anything's proven here, just that those who walk it either prove they belong or disappear. To distract yourself, you count Mesopotamian gods in your head. Enlil, the storm god. Inanna, goddess of love and war. Nergal, lord of the underworld. You imagine them perched on sandstone ledges, watching you like lazy buzzards with glittering eyes. They're not here to help, just to see if you're worth the trouble. Around mid-afternoon, the terrain changes subtly. You begin to notice shapes, large, deliberate piles of stone, cairns, markers, maybe graves, maybe warnings. Some are just a few rocks, stacked like pancakes. Others form crude arches or circles. No one agrees on their origin. Native trail signs, outlaw symbols, something older. One rider mutters, "Don't touch them, they're watching." You don't ask what they are. Just before camp, you spot a flash of white among the brush. Fabric, weather-worn, half buried. You dig a little and find what's left of a shirt, a belt buckle shaped like a longhorn skull, and a rusted revolver with 2 bullets still chambered. No bones. The message is clear. Someone almost made it. That night, the stars seem closer, almost friendly. You think of Babylonian astronomers mapping the heavens on clay tablets. They saw the stars as living things, guides, witnesses, even gods. Your favorite is Nibiru, the crossing star. Some say it only appears when the sky wants to send a message. You look for it. Maybe tonight is one of those nights. The pharmacist pulls out a tattered book, an almanac, half biblical, half practical. He reads aloud about the coming weather, though it hasn't rained in weeks. You all chuckle weakly. Then someone tells a story about a snake that hypnotizes travelers with its eyes before it bites. Another shares a dream he had of a city buried beneath the desert, where the buildings are made of bone and the doors open backward. You're not sure if it's the heat or the exhaustion, but these stories feel less like campfire fun and more like warnings whispered from the cracks in the world. Eventually, you drift to sleep, head resting on Bean's warm flank. He smells like old hay and judgment, but you're grateful he's here. You dream of a wide gate carved from cedar and lapis lazuli. It opens slowly. You walk through it and find not heaven or home, but a library, endless rows of tablets, a place where every lost traveler has a name. You wake up with tears in your eyes and dust in your mouth. It's morning again. Time to walk. The air is still as you begin the next leg of the journey. Not calm, still, like the desert itself is holding its breath. Not even the wind dares move. The silence isn't peaceful. It's anticipatory. You feel it in your bones. Something's coming. The terrain becomes deceptive. What looks flat from afar turns treacherous up close. Ruts, fissures, sudden drops in elevation where the earth seems to have collapsed in exhaustion. You learn to keep your eyes low and your steps careful. One twisted ankle out here, and your odds of survival plummet faster than a Mesopotamian brick dropped from a ziggurat. Speaking of bricks, remember how those Sumerians used mud brick for everything? Homes, temples, walls. But those bricks weren't fired, just sun-dried, which means most of their cities eventually melted back into the soil, like ghosts dissolving into the past. Out here, you wonder if you'll melt the same way. Someone in your group begins talking to themselves. At first, it's just mutters, but by midday, it's full conversations with an invisible friend named Doris. Nobody knows what to do. Could be heat stroke, could be something else. Either way, Doris is now part of the caravan, and she's oddly polite. The horizon shimmers. Mirage, or so you think, until one of the scouts yells. You grab your gear and scramble ahead. There it is, a settlement, or what's left of one. Adobe walls, half collapsed, a well long dry, a windmill missing its blades. You feel like you've stepped into a photograph left out in the sun too long. The place is deserted, but not empty. There are signs of recent presence, ashes in a fire pit, footprints, the faint smell of tobacco. Cautiously, you search the area. Inside what used to be a saloon, you find scratched graffiti on the wall. God forgive the strong. Just beneath it, a handprint, child-sized, pressed into drying mud. It makes your stomach tighten. In the back room, a mirror still hangs on the wall, cracked but intact. You catch your own reflection and barely recognize yourself. Sunburned, hollow-eyed, half feral, but alive. So far. The pharmacist checks for usable supplies, finds dried beans, a jar of pickled eggs, and, miracle of miracles, a bottle of whiskey half hidden under the floorboards. You all take a tiny sip. It burns like justice. Then someone finds the dolls. Tiny, crude, made from corn husks and twine, all lined up in a row along the hearth, each with a little pebble for a face, each staring in the same direction. You don't sleep in that town. You push onward, nerves frayed. Doris mutters about how the dolls were watching her. No one laughs. Late afternoon, a dust storm rolls in like a wall. Fast, furious, it screams across the plain, obliterating the sky in a rush of ochre and grit. You barely have time to grab your scarf and goggles before it hits. Visibility drops to nothing. The world becomes a howl. You crouch low, clinging to Bean's harness, both of you hunkered behind a rock outcropping. Sand pelts your skin like tiny needles. You try to breathe through the cloth, but every inhale tastes like crushed pottery. Storms like this are common in dry lands, both here and in the ancient Near East. The Mesopotamians even had gods of the desert wind, like Pazuzu, the demon king of the southwest wind. He protected against disease but brought chaos. You think about him now, snarling across the plains with sand in his teeth. The storm lasts nearly an hour. When it passes, everything is coated in grit. Your eyelids feel lined with glass. The wagons are half buried, tents flattened. Beans looks personally offended, but no one's dead. Small wins. Cleanup takes the rest of the day. Camp is made hastily. Dinner is ash-covered jerky and a shared bottle of stale water. It tastes amazing. That night, conversation returns. A few laughs. Doris is quiet. A man named Lester plays a song on his guitar. It's a terrible song, but everyone listens like it's Beethoven. You sit by the fire, looking out across the dark plain, and wonder if there were nights like this in ancient Ur. If someone like you sat by a fire, staring into shadows, wondering if they'd see morning. The more things change, the more they don't. You fall asleep against Beans, who has become less mule and more spiritual guide at this point. In your dreams, you're walking through a desert made entirely of cuneiform tablets. Every step crunches into ancient wisdom. You bend to read one. It simply says, "Keep going." Morning greets you, not with birdsong or sunbeams, but with a foul, clinging smell, acrid and unmistakably organic. Something's dead, and not freshly. You rise with a groan, checking on Beans first. He's fine, though his ears are pinned back, and he's staring toward the east with narrowed eyes. Something has his attention. The smell grows stronger as you move, and it doesn't take long before you find the source. A pair of oxen, bloated and stiff, collapsed beside a cracked wagon. A few scattered supplies, mostly ruined, suggest a party didn't make it through the dust storm, or worse. The wagon's rear is splashed with something dried and dark. No bodies, though. No tracks either. Just wind-swept dust. The doctor mutters a quiet prayer. You do, too. In the ancient city of Lagash, there was a practice of leaving symbolic offerings at crossroads to protect travelers. Clay figures, bits of food, even tiny inscribed prayers. You consider leaving something here. But what? A button? A coin? In the end, you settle for a few drops of water poured into the dirt. The modern traveler's libation. The road ahead narrows into a ravine, flanked by sandstone cliffs. The air feels thicker here, like it's trapped between the rock faces. Sound behaves differently. More echo, less depth. Every wagon wheel squeak and mule snort sounds theatrical. Someone jokes about it being a perfect place for an ambush. No one laughs. You press on through the canyon, shadows creeping longer with each hour. The sun rarely finds its way in, and the wind has stopped entirely. It's a relief, until you realize it means nothing is moving, not even insects. The stillness sets your nerves on edge. As you walk, you notice carvings in the stone, faint, almost erased by wind and time. Not Native American, not modern graffiti, just rows of marks. Tally lines, maybe days, or victims, or attempts to stay sane. Doris, who's been mostly silent since the dolls, mutters, someone was counting their way out. Then she shushes herself and goes back to humming. You hear running water. At first, you think it's your imagination. But no, real, actual water. Everyone breaks into a jog. Beans nearly bolts. At the canyon's end, there it is. A spring-fed stream, trickling over smooth stones. You strip off your boots and wade in. The cold, biting but glorious. Everyone laughs. The stream isn't deep, but you could float in it if you needed to. You do, briefly, eyes closed, sun on your face. A moment of grace. Nearby, someone finds animal tracks. Deer, maybe. Even in this brutal place, life clings. You gather water, wash clothes, tend blisters. The pharmacist checks everyone's vitals, including Doris, who insists her friend approves of the doctor's bedside manner. Around the fire, someone tells the story of a desert outlaw known as El Dustico, a man so dry he didn't bleed, just flaked. Another insists they saw him once, riding a skeletal horse. You smile. A proper campfire ghost tale. Mesopotamians had a few of their own, like Lamashtu, the she-demon who hunted children and pregnant women. Scholars still argue whether she was a true demon or just a misunderstood goddess. You sip watered-down whiskey and let the stories wash over you like the stream. For the first time in days, the fear lessens. Then the wind picks up. At first, it's just a breeze. Then it howls, funneling through the canyon like an angry god. Tents flap. The fire dies. You scramble to secure supplies, cover wagons, calm animals. Beans plants his hooves and glares into the darkness. That's when you hear the whistle. It's not wind, it's a high, deliberate note. 3 sharp bursts, then silence. Everyone freezes. Another whistle, further up the canyon. Then another, behind you. You draw your weapon, such as it is. Others do the same. The pharmacist readies a scalpel. Doris pulls a rock from her pocket. You brace, yourselves. Nothing happens. Just the wind again. Eventually, it dies down. Everyone's shaken. No one saw anything. But no one sleeps easily that night. You dream of a ziggurat in the canyon, built sideways into the rock wall. Each level glows with firelight, and whispering figures drift through its corridors, carrying urns filled with sand. One stops and hands you a clay tablet. It says, "You are being watched." You wake up at dawn, heart racing. No footprints, no evidence. Just the endless trail, waiting. You pack quickly. The stream is still there, babbling innocently. But you don't trust it anymore. As you leave the canyon, someone adds a new set of tally marks to the rock wall. Just in case someone else ever finds their way here. Just in case they wonder how many made it out. You emerge from the canyon like a rat crawling out of a drain, grateful for daylight, but suspicious of everything it touches. The cliffs behind you narrow into shadow. The plain ahead is wide open, wind-blasted, and utterly indifferent to your continued existence. The caravan reforms slowly, more subdued than usual. Even Doris seems quiet. The pharmacist keeps glancing over his shoulder. You all do. Soon, you hit another fork in the trail. No signposts, just two equally uninviting paths. One leads across a wide salt flat, shimmering like spilled glass. The other snakes through a low, brush-choked valley that smells faintly of something sweet, like decay, covered in lilacs. You vote. It's close, but the salt flat wins. It feels safer to be exposed than cornered again. The moment your boots hit the white crust, you regret everything. The salt reflects sunlight like polished steel. Within minutes, the heat is unbearable. It rises from the ground in visible waves, distorting the horizon like a mirage made of lies. In Mesopotamia, salt wasn't just a seasoning, it was a weapon. After sacking a city, conquering armies sometimes salted the earth to prevent crops from growing. Pure spite, baked into the soil. You're walking through centuries of spite. Your canteen sloshes low. You sip and immediately regret it. Warm, metallic. You wonder how many miles until the next trickle of mercy. Halfway through the flat, one of the oxen collapses. No warning, just thuds over and doesn't move. The owner kneels beside it, whispering to it like an old friend. After a minute, he stands up, says nothing, and keeps walking. You all do. To lighten the mood, someone tries to start a game. Name the weirdest thing you'd eat right now if it meant being airlifted out. Suggestions range from my own sock lightly boiled to a scorpion smoothie with cactus foam. Even Doris offers, I'd chew on Bean's tail like it was licorice. Beans glares, but does not object. The sun hangs directly overhead now, a coin balanced on a blade. You wrap a cloth over your head, squinting through a sliver. You imagine the Sumerians doing this same thing. Wandering trade caravans, sunburned merchants, scribes grumbling over sun-baked tablets. You once read about a Mesopotamian king who declared himself divine simply for surviving the desert. Honestly, you get it. Late afternoon, you spot movement in the distance. Shapes. Low and slow. Not horses, not riders. Buffalo. A herd, far off, grazing lazily near a rocky rise. You haven't seen that many animals in days. The scouts veer closer, careful not to spook them. Meat is meat. But you're no hunter, so you stay behind, watching the dust rise like a signal. While you wait, you dig a tiny pit with your boot and sit down beside it. The crust breaks into pale, powdery sand below. You touch it, then taste a grain on your finger. Salt. Pure as betrayal. That's when you see it. Etched faintly into a rock beside your pit, 3 cuneiform symbols. Not modern graffiti, ancient, faded but real. Probably Sumerian or Akkadian. You don't read either, but you recognize one symbol from a museum catalog. Namtar, spirit of fate and death. You casually brush sand over it. No need to share. The scouts return victorious. 1 buffalo down, meat butchered and wrapped. Spirits rise with the smell of something other than jerky. Even Doris smiles. That evening, as the sky turns violet and gold, you camp near a stone outcrop. Someone strings up strips of buffalo meat like laundry. Others build a windbreak with brush. You boil your socks. The pharmacist finds a scorpion near the fire and pokes it with a stick. It stings the stick. Everyone applauds. He names it Governor. You sit beside Beans, who has developed a habit of resting his chin on your shoulder. It's comforting and heavy. Together, you watch the stars emerge. In Babylon, the sky was a living calendar. Scholars carved star charts into clay with a reed stylus, tracking eclipses and planets. They believed the gods spoke through constellations. You trace out a shape that might be a bull or a bowl or a lost mule named Beans. The fire crackles. Laughter hums like a lullaby. For the first time in days, you let yourself believe in safety, in tomorrow, in reaching wherever this cursed trail leads. You drift off against Beans, who snores once, loudly, and startles himself awake. In your dream, you walk through a Mesopotamian marketplace, barefoot. People sell clay jars filled with rainwater, honey-soaked bread, and strange carvings that whisper when touched. One merchant offers you a wooden flute. When you play it, the ground shakes and a great ziggurat rises from beneath the earth. You climb it. At the top is a door carved with your name. You open it. Inside, only wind. Morning comes softly, with pink clouds and the scent of roasted buffalo lingering in your clothes. It should be peaceful, should be. But you've been on this trail long enough to know that a quiet dawn often means the storm's still choosing which direction to approach from. You break camp with practiced swiftness. Your hands move without needing your mind. Folding tarp, tightening straps, checking Bean's hooves. He nudges you once, then resumes chewing something unidentifiable. A cactus? A bone? You choose not to investigate. The final stretch lies ahead. The last leg before the nearest known town, a speck called Dry Mercy, which you're told is 3 buildings, a well, and a man named Otis, who may or may not be alive. The trail winds upward now. Not a mountain, but a steep, stubborn ridge. Climbing it means slow going, but the view, if you make it, promises to be spectacular. Unless, of course, you die first. About a third of the way up, someone starts wheezing. You offer your water. They refuse. Pride runs deep, even when the lungs are shallow. The climb gets worse. Every step sinks slightly into the dust. The sun seems to lean closer, like it's judging you. Rocks tumble with casual menace. Bean slips once, and your heart skips like a scratched phonograph. You pause at a wide ledge halfway up. The entire landscape unfurls beneath you, an endless ripple of tan and ochre dusted in salt. Beautiful and cruel, like most of history. There's a pause in the climb, and someone pulls out a harmonica. They play a crooked little tune, half lullaby, half funeral march. It sounds like something ancient. You imagine a shepherd in Ur, playing the same melody on a reed pipe to calm his flock, or himself. Ancient Mesopotamians believed mountains were sacred places, home to gods or monsters, depending on which city-state you asked. Historians still argue whether the ziggurats were meant to reach the heavens or to trap something below. You resume climbing. At one point, you pass a rock formation shaped uncannily like a human face, worn by wind and time, its empty eyes watching your struggle with bemused detachment. You reach the summit just before midday, and there it is. Dry Mercy. From this height, it looks like someone spilled matchsticks on the sand and called it civilization. The three promised buildings, one clearly a saloon, lean in on each other like gossiping elders. A windmill creaks. You spot a horse moving near the well. It's alive. So maybe Otis is too. The descent is easier on the lungs, harder on the knees. Gravity wants to help, but it doesn't care about your ankles. Still, you all make it down in one piece, which feels like winning the Mesopotamian lottery. 5 barley tokens and a pet goat. The moment your boots hit the cracked main street, Otis appears, shirtless, bearded, holding a broom like it's a weapon. "Don't steal my chickens," he says. You see no chickens. He nods, satisfied. You drop your pack, find shade under the saloon's awning, and exhale for what feels like the first time in a week. Otis brings out a bucket of water. "Well's good, mostly." You drink, deciding not to ask what mostly means. Inside the saloon, there's one table, one chair, and 2 dead flies floating in a jar of something brown. You sit on the floor and feel wealthier than Hammurabi on tax day. Later, as the sun dips low, the pharmacist sets up a makeshift clinic on the porch. Bandages are reapplied, feet are soaked. Doris whispers goodbye to her imaginary friend. Apparently, they're moving to the city. The night arrives gently. Fireflies dance over a patch of thistle. A coyote howls from far off. Otis plays a banjo terribly and refuses to stop. You lie back against a barrel, beans beside you, and stare up at the stars. In Mesopotamia, the star, Sirius, was sacred, used to mark calendars, guide planting seasons, and inspire poetry. You imagine a priest staring at the same sky 4,000 years ago, trying to decipher meaning in the movement of light. Now, you just watch. You think about all you've learned on this journey, not just about survival, but about the small kindnesses that appear when things are at their worst. The joke someone told when your throat was cracked, the shared crust of bread, the touch on your shoulder when you thought you couldn't go another step. You made it. And not because you were the strongest or smartest or had the best gear. You made it because you didn't stop. And that across time, across civilizations, across deserts, is the only reason any of us ever make it. The stars glimmer above you now, soft and infinite, scattered across the velvet black like crushed pearls. The desert air has cooled finally, brushing over your skin with a gentle hush, lifting away the grit of the day. Somewhere nearby, Beans lets out a long, sleepy sigh, the kind that says, "I'm done fighting the world for now." The windmill squeaks with a rhythm that's almost like breathing. Crickets chirp in lazy harmony. You're not walking anymore. You're not climbing. You're just here. The flickering campfire has burned low, just embers now. Warm, pulsing coals, like the last heartbeat of a long story. You stretch your legs out, toes finally free, the aches of the trail fading with each passing moment. Your mind drifts, not to danger or discomfort, but to that marketplace in your dream. The warm bread, the flute music, the ziggurat rising from the earth. Maybe that's where your spirit went, just for a while. Maybe that's where all trail-weary souls go when they sleep, curled inside a whisper of a temple. The world feels far away. Even history seems to exhale. You're no longer the traveler struggling through a broken land. You're part of it now. Part of the wind, the dust, the stars, the same long thread that ties a Wild West campfire to a Sumerian altar. All of it, humming softly under the night. Let that hum carry you. Let your muscles go slack, your eyelids fall. There's no trail to follow now, only peace, only the cool weight of sleep settling in. Tomorrow doesn't need you yet. End of script. Sweet dreams.